Okay, we're going to talk about Iapetus, and I welcome you to open up a wiki page on the side if you want to and look at this or do this afterwards, reading through it again and still playing in the background so you can hear what I'm saying to you and so on. But Iapetus is a person from Greek mythology, but I'm fixing to make about 14 connections here, and this is for one person who was talking to me online the other day and has now become a member. And this is for you, but it's also for two other people. For on an elder video, someone asked me a question and they seem like they pretty much have it there, but they asked me a question and this should answer that. Also, there's another person about another topic totally seemingly different than what I seem to start off with here, but quite ironically, the way I do this, it all hooks up together. And you will also understand whenever your time comes up. One of these. Also, I will make a slight vagueness or mistake, and it will key point because that's what we talked about. And if you watch this, you know who you are. Anyhow, guys, for all of the rest of this should be entertaining, and it should make a whole bunch of connections in your little web that we've talked about quite frequently. Oh, let me see if I can get this. I don't know why it's tilted just a hair. This is a little better. Hope you're not seeing lines on that. God, that's so small too. Well, I welcome you to this. Greek mythology, Iapetus. So it's got that Ia, and then Apetus at the end of it, right? And people have said, well, it's Japetus, and so they've got a connection to J, but the letter J really wasn't existent in till way later after the 1300s and stuff, and really wasn't utilized greatly until like 1500s and stuff. A lot of people don't know that, so it makes you wonder about this Jesus and Jews and things like that. But the Iapetus ends up becoming that. So when you get this name, it ends up becoming that. And that's in linguistics and a change here, and we're going to look at that, and that's part of what makes up the reveal here. So in Greek mythology, Iapetus is also Japetus, and you look at this in here, and it's Japetus right here as it looks. And then I've spoken about how Greeks have os on the end of them or us on the end of them, and it deifies somebody. There are quite a few names that we even use commonly today that don't have the us on them, but did at times whenever they put out their stuff. But other ones, it's part of their name, like Pegasus, Cronus. There's a bunch. But yeah, Petos. And whenever I tell you that it was always surrounding me and in my face, and almost it would be like boom and da da da, and I would think nothing of it, and then seemingly within days or sometimes just after, I would have something do this. I remember taking, whenever I was young, learning about this, I had boxed up a bunch of books whenever I was a kid, and these were old books, and Find Spot, and whatever, the monkey, and oh, now I'm trying to key his name, and it's not coming to me, but Curious George, and Pinocchio, and just all these other things that I had, and we had them boxed up, and they were in my closet, and I wanted to get space for it, and we needed to do so and stuff, so we ended up moving them out until the attic until my sister became of age and had a child, and then we were like, here's your books, and here's two whole giant boxes full of books, kids books and everything. And that was supposed to get passed around through the family, but it didn't quite happen like that, but that's okay. But ironically, Geppetto and this thing in keying on, whenever I was studying this, came up as a key point, and someone made a key point about it, and started saying about the Brothers Grimm and the ancient story that made up Japeth, and that kind of gave me some insight to a few things. I may do a video about that in itself, and Pinocchio, and how it really works out, and what the connections are, and the fanciful tale that's been drawn out of it. But regardless of that, here we have Japetus. And whenever I started studying it, it got on there, somehow that kicked in my mind. And whenever I do the thing on Geppetto and Pinocchio, you'll see how that kicks in a whole nother connection that really wasn't there until that point. Regardless of that, Iapetus or Japetus was a Titan, the son of Uranus and Gaia. And people say Gaia, and I'm familiar with doing that too, but it could be Gia. And then we have the Sumerians who have Ki and Kia, and there's even a Egyptian princess, Kia, but we don't need to go through all of that type stuff. But he was a Titan, and it was the father of Atlas himself, but also Prometheus. And we know about Prometheus, and he's really the guy that ended up bringing fire to people and stuff, and da-da-da. And so it's like that bad angel idea, right, where he brings knowledge and things like that, and the angels started doing the things that God had never intended. And I've made a video about how God wanted to keep people stupid because things like the Tower of Babel and this, that, and the other, and if I let them keep going, no telling what they'll do and stuff. It's said right in there, and it's just, so what the hell? But whenever you realize the levity of the exact situation and what they're talking about, it's something totally different. But you can see it. And here's the Jesus type character, and he's chained up and the thing, and people know about that, and the eagle and everything that's attached to that. But those are supposed to be those Colchian type people too, and everything. And oh, cut the ding, there you go with something. But let's look at this a little farther. Now, he was the father of Atlas, Prometheus, and Epimetheus. Those are brothers. Epimetheus was kind of like the day out of it, and Prometheus was the yay. But when you look at the stories, he screwed up real bad, and they, anyhow. And Miniotis. And people say that this has to do with the Minoans. And stuff, and their connections there, although it's not written straight out in the stories, and there's a few connections that are like that here. But he's also called the father of Buphagus. Now, phagus is to eat something, right? But people say Buphagus, and that actually has a lot to do with Alexander the Great and Baphyrion, his horse. But it linguistically doesn't hook up correctly, but people have said if you go back one step on either way that would have been, it does connect somewhat. And so you have to look at these things as we know some of these names that I'm using here in kind of a Latin context, and it's still extant in our voice and things that we have today, but it comes from other things that are real close to that, right? So he was the father of Buphagus, and what do they say about it here? He's the son of Japetus, and Thornax was an Akkadian hero of prominence. He received wounded Iphicles, the brother of Heracles, into his house and took care of him until he died. Buphagus was afterwards killed by Artemis for having pursued her. And these tales are fanciful, and I had something neat to say about these tales are fanciful, blah, 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 before we started, but I almost feel impatient and want to go ahead and get on to the next things that I want to talk about. And perhaps we'll step back into out of the picture and break the fourth wall again to do that. But Buphagus and Ankali. In Greek mythology, Ankali or Ankh-Ial, as it's spelled here, but that contains Ankh, was the name of the following personages. Either it's Ankh-Ial, said to have founded the town of Ankh-Ial near Tarsus in Cilicia. So we know what Tarsus is, Tarshish. It's talked about in the Bible, and they would make treks to there and everything. We find out that's where the tin mines are, and going all the way up to Cornwall and stuff, and where Cilicia used to be, and Galatia used to be. Her father was named Iapetus, and had a son named Sidonus. Sidonus. That has to do with Poseidonus, and the ancient city of Sidon. But that's way over here in the Mediterranean at the far edge over here. Sidon still exists. I'm well aware of that. And they're telling you that Iapetus comes from that area way over there to the west of that. Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock, knock. But that's only in some sources here. What we have is a threefold thing, and I'll show you that later, and it kind of reveals the fact of different people got together putting this all together. Of course, when I was a kid, and people know nowadays that Roman gods are exactly equivalent and pretty much are a mirrored effect of the Greek gods and everything, but I wanted to, whenever I was a kid, to see if it all was the same, and I had this whole thing, what if it was all true? And quite often it comes out to being not my kid dream of what if it's all true, you know, because when I thought I was a kid, maybe I could find out magic that everybody lost and stuff, and what's that got to do with everything, and I might find a secret lantern and rub on it and get a genie and get 3 wishes, and then I'd, you know, but things like that fade into reality. So let's go ahead and break the third wall here with the next statement, and I'm going to break it a fourth wall too and show you the connections that I've been trying to show you for years now. Here's another one coming. Take a sip of coffee. Listen up. We're talking about Iapetus, but it's also Japetus. But Iapetus has been equated with Japeth. You might know that name. He's the son of Noah. Yeah, when he lands in the Caucasus Mountains on that boat, and the 3 different separate Caucasians that have that boat, Shemites, Hamites, and Japethites, right? So we've got that idea. Okay, so who is this Iapetus? Okay, sometimes in ancient times, people that were somebody in real life got deified as a god. You follow me? And they become the great men of well renown, men of old, and blah, blah, blah. Are they giants? Well, you know, people that are giants of certain things. Jack Nicklaus is a giant in golf, and he's my size, so there are great men. Oh, great, big, great. You know, he did giant. Oh, it's got to be a giant. Not necessarily, but we can turn that into it real quick. Not that there weren't some giants, and we've done some videos about that. In fact, I've got one from way back before Christmas that I never released. But I didn't want to hit people with too much, and it just seemed like it was out of place right now. In fact, right now, thinking about it, it kind of seems out of place too, except for I mentioned it. Somehow went down that branch and back to the root. Let me get back to the root of the tree here with everybody. Everybody get with me. So he's been equated with Japeth, and that's the son of Noah, as the progenitor of mankind. Based on the similarity of their names and tradition, Iapetus was linked with Japeth by 17th century theologian Matthew Poole, also Robert Graves, and John Perriman Brown. But I'll tell you, some people did this before too, but whenever they did, they killed those people. Yeah, there's a guy that's got a video about it, and he can go into the whole thing, and really it just comes out kind of conjecture and stuff, but oh, there was heresy and all this da-da-da, and well, what was it? Well, that's what he had said. Oh, wait, there's another one, and he goes into it and everything, and there's another one I found too, which may or may not, but we're knowing the other 2 are, and you're like, wow, you know? Like they didn't like it when they found out the sun was the center and the earth sent around. People know about that, Copernicus and the whole ideas about it and everything, right? But, so we've got Japeth. Iapetus, Japetus, is actually Japeth of your Bible. Now there are people that put a T, and there are people who put a TH and a th on things, and just like there was a people that had a S and a sh like Shemitic and Semitic, all right? And so you get twists of little things like that, and some things are so close that you can recognize it. Other ones are a step away, and you don't really know it until you study something else, and then somehow that points out, oh my gosh. I'll give you another connection here, and here's one of my guys coming for Japeth and this Aya being a god like Ea of the Sumerians to the Proto-Indo-Europeans and Proto-Indo-European linguistics, which all these people are a part of, and we even are a part of today in a derived way. But it seriously goes back from the ancient languages of Ireland and the Celts and stuff, all the way through to Sanskrit, all the way up to China, all the way across what we call Russia and stuff today. But in that area right there across the Black Sea and these Scythians and stuff that I've talked about a whole bunch, this would have been pronounced differently. For Iapetus would have been Dios Pater. What? Dios Pater. Actually, it'll go back one step before that, and then that's that Aryan language that everybody really could speak to each other, and they'd at least understand what the hell was going on, because there's a before language of each of these people, and we talked about the migrations that ended up being these people, and so the secondary migration would still be totally involved in this situation right now, exactly right. And so would they break? Well, yeah, hell yeah, because at that time there was only this slight variation on a theme, and they could understand each other. It wasn't two steps away, and then these people that I'm talking about didn't step away the other direction. Oh, they make up some incredible languages, and you don't think so. But look at German, and then look at French, and look at Scandinavian, and some languages around there in Denmark and stuff. Oh, yes, yep, those people are all related. When I was a kid, you'd make up your own language. There was this show called Zoom, and they had this hubby frubbins, little things. It was kind of like their own made-up idea of Pig Latin, but it's that simple to try to make up a language. All you have to do is have a veer or a difference of it. But Dios Pater, what's that? I'll make another connection here. Dios Pater is Jupiter. Japetus is Jupiter. Okay? Because there was no J, so it couldn't be Jupiter, for it could be Dios Pater. But when we say Jew, Father, Dios Pater, who the hell are people were we talking about? Right. And then there was this thing about angels and a bunch of them coming down in a rain of apparent stars that fell from heaven, and this was supposed to signify a time when these things happened. And then these people came, and they were the angels, and they got with women, and all these things broke out of it. In the Bible, it says that's when things started just freaking out and going to shit, right? So when would that have been happening? Well, we've talked about the Younger Dryas event and these comets going on and the torrid meteor shower and these things left of it, and strangely the comet's name is Enki, which is Ea, which has to go with this, but Iapetus also has to do with Yahweh. Oh, there's all kinds of connections, and we haven't even got past the thing. This is just a small one, though. It's only like 2 pages worth. See if I can get somewhere. Where the hell am I? 20 minutes coming on it here, huh? So, where's his abode and all that stuff? Well, they live in Tartarus, right? Tartarus is a deep abyss used in a dungeon of torment, suffering for the wicked as a prison for the Titans. Tartarus is a place where, according to Plato's Gorgias, souls of the judge of the dead, where the wicked receive divine punishment. That sound familiar to y'all? Let's try to let's just go there, and let's see if I can make another connection out of it, right? So they're also considered to be the primordial force of deity along the entities such as the earth and night and time, which would have been Gaia and Kronos and Nikt, a goddess of the night. But Tartarus, we've talked about this before in a few videos, but I didn't go way into it. And there's a lot of people who've dug way into it, mud floods and all kinds of crazy things. So I decided I would leave the idea of Tartar or Tartaria alone. But I did do one and made a joke out of tartar sauce and all the things that go on. And you can look at old maps and you'll find that over there near France and over in that European area over there, there's Tartarus, as well as what we know of Tartaria way over here. And there's a reason for that, and that those people are the same people, and like I've said before, they spread apart and get back together and so on. But so they make the connections here of Gaia and everything, the following after chaos and Earth, and the whole theogony of it going down, and then the monster Typhon. Tartarus was an offspring. So, man, I'm going to lose it trying to pull together 6 thoughts at once. So we talked about Typhon and everything, and we know that the world was volcanically active, but also after this event, or this Younger Dryas thing, there was a lot of volcanic activity going on. In fact, I've got another couple of videos coming up where they figured out, hey, this volcano here coincides with the exact time these Mayans got screwed off, and that screwed everybody off. But hold on a minute, exactly during that time, isn't there this place, and Rome was telling you about all this stuff, and it was all colder, and they made big mention of it. So there must have been something. And wait, here's another one talking about Rome, and and that has to do with another volcano. That's funny because the first paper said that it shouldn't have as far-reaching effects as it seemed to have, but then you add that other one in, that these other people, they need to call each other. But that's something totally different, right? So anyhow, we talked about that. Well, as far as the place of where this goes, and Tartarus and everything, so we know it's land and it's over here and everything, but hold on, then there's a whole up and down situation, distance, fathoms, people that work with boats and everything, in the abyss of a ocean that gets deep, and it goes along those lines. As for the place, Hesiod asserts that a bronze anvil falling from the heavens would fall 9 days before it reached the earth. And that's the reason that there are 9 levels to heaven, but there are also 9 levels to hell. For listen, the anvil would take 9 days more to fall from earth to Tartarus. In the Iliad, both Zeus asserts that Tartarus is as far beneath the Hades as heaven is above the earth. Similarly, the mythographer Apollodorus describes Tartarus as a gloomy place in Hades, as far distant from earth as the earth is distant from the skies. And so this is the idea where we get hell down inside the earth and everything, and you go, well, no, that's from the Bible and everything. I'm going to question you to find me verse where it describes things in this way. I know you and I believe in these ways, and we've kind of got this whole thing going on, and it shows you how much is still active in it that's not really active. And in fact, I did one on hell and where that is, because they talk about Sheol and Gehenna. They don't talk about the same place. And it's the same place. It's the same song. I understand it. Yeah, I know what's coming up. It's the same song. Work on it that way. So Cronus came to power as the king of the Titans. He imprisoned the one-eyed Cyclops, the 100-armed Hecatonaires, which are giant, actually, tribes here. Well, they said they had 100 arms and shit and everything, in Tartarus, and set the monster Campa as its guard. And Campa is also can be spelled with a K, and here we start to work with Germanic linguistics, hooking up with Proto-Europeans, Campa. But anyhow, so, and she hooks up with a Titamaki, and whenever he starts to become king and so on. But the other Titans banished were Prometheus and Epimetheus, and female Titans such as Metis. And if you'll look at that picture right there, that's Venus. And you wonder what an angel is, and there you go. Well, hold on, she's supposed to be in hell. Well, we just talked about that too in one of my D&D videos, where I've got these bat wings now, and how you've got to have a yin and yang, and there's an up and down to everything. But to all these people, when you went, you might go through some torturing situation, but nothing was forever. Like The Bible tries to pull it off because they're trying to scare the hell out of you to where you quit doing things. But in these theologies they had, it was even the devil was in prison for 1,000 years in this pit in Tartarus, right? In chains, and he's da 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 da. So that's a long ass time, isn't it? But for people that lived forever, it's a lot. And people have made weird things and assumptions. And I said something a long time ago, and I've seen it in a couple of movies and mentions since then. But if God has you, and then the devil gets you afterwards if you've been bad, but the devil tortures you for what you've done wrong, isn't he doing God's bidding in the first place? And so this still works out, and it's a Titan situation, pantheon, angels, saints, the whole 9 yards worked out. But also, let me see, how do I put this correctly here? If God gets to have you during your lifetime, and your lifetime is, say, 85 or 100 years, let's say 100 years, but when you die, you go to heaven or hell, and you're there forever, wouldn't Hades and Pluto and these other gods and hell herself and so on, wouldn't this person be a well-revered person, not looked at as the devil? Well, we hate death. I understand that, and I understand where we are now from where we were too, believe me. But there was a time when these people embraced hell in somewhat, and no matter what went on, it was all going to be okay, in Elysian fields and all this type of situation. It wasn't the idea that we have today, and in fact, the idea we have today that we think that we got it from, we didn't get it from. You following me? Hope you're still following me. So he eventually gives forgiveness, and they were released from Tartarus to become rulers of Elysium. Now, what's Elysium? Well, Elysium and Elysian fields and da-da-da, and this is thing. What's that? That's the same fields and special place that the Egyptians have and everything. What, Elysian fields. Surely y'all know about this. And so I could go on through here, man. This thing gets deep right here, but it's something to read separately, and I'm not going to make this thing last forever. So let's go back to where I was. And so Japetus, and he has a nickname known as the Piercer. He also has a halo around his head, and this is also a sexual reference just in his look in symbology in ancient times too. I hope you got it. This one, Titan, mentioned by Homer in the Iliad as being Tartarus with Kronos. He is a brother of Kronos who ruled the world during the Golden Age. Now, this was a step back. This is back coming out of the last ice age at least, but this is also a culmination of people that had it already going on, and so that was a culmination before, but then that grew. And so somebody asked me, did they have this thing, da da da? Well, they have essence of it. You can look at the Venus figurines thing that I did, and you can see this thing goes on. Well, people have gotten all bitchy about it, and they go, well, they weren't worshiping Venus, Diana, and this, that, and the other, or Inanna and stuff. Well, we can find Inanna references to 22,000 BC, and that's way the hell back in the Ice Age. And I would say that it's the essence of the same thing, and it's not necessarily the Greeks, because they turned it all into this separate garden that they had going on, and so did these people over here, and the Sumerians, and Egypt did too, and all the people of Europe too, and it's all the same story. And eventually the storm god wins over, and Zeus and El gave way to Baal with the lightning strikes, and same thing happens in Samaria with Ninurta, or Marduk as you know him, and things, and then there. So it all works that same way, but there's always something that screws it up, like Egypt, where they don't really have storms. But they still had Hadad on the coast there, the people that were going on, and they have Adon, and they were already in Ammon, who people have equated, well, that's the same guy, so that's the same guy, that's the same guy, the same guy. Right? So it's working out that we are talking about somebody who was in the Bible at this one point. And so now you're supposed to make the jump on the fact that he had castrated his father and done these things. Whenever that scene happens in the Bible where Noah gets all drunk and something happens for one of his sons, and then he doesn't even curse his son or his son's first son, which you think is supposed to be the one he does. He curses his fourth son, which is Canaan, and it ends up being the Canaanites and the Phoenicians and this, that, and the other, is because the Phoenicians called themselves Canaan. And now we can probably make about 6 more connections of recent videos I've had to, and how this all connects a little bit more than anybody's willing to give credit for. Japetus' wife is usually described as the daughter of Oceanus and Tethys, but this is whenever you have the sea people who are running everything in a time before we believe that people had boats. In fact, the Tethys Sea is the sea whenever everything was hooked up together and all the continents in Pangaea, and it's the middle trapped ocean of that they named for a reason. But I'm not saying it goes back that far. I'm saying they threw that name on it. Just like they threw the extra little moons they found around these planets with all these things on it with the Greek and Roman names. And they fit, kind of. That's strange. So, he said that Oceanus either named Clymene or Asia. What? Oh yeah, Asia. Y'all know Asia. Let me see if I can give you old Asia, new Asia. New Asia. Now, people would say Asia or Asian, and all of a sudden you think of Oriental people, but I'm not talking about Oriental people, I'm talking about Asia. Afghanistan is still in Asia, all the way in the edge of the Orient, but hold on, Asia Minor is Anatolia. And they kept names from ancient times. Anat, which makes up Anatolia, is El's daughter, brother and sister of Baal and Anat. Anat is Diana, Inanna, but isn't Diana Venus? Yeah, and it works out like a queen of heaven and all this type of thing, so it's done. Okay, I'm working it out to where it's going to take, it's going to be 40 minutes on this whole thing. But so you see, Asia is connected to this, but also I've made one about Egyptus and how it connects, and they were brothers and all these things and the connections of that, but that's not one of the popular ones, and it's not well told. Just like Ethiopia that Greeks talk about is actually not the Ethiopian people that you think of, for if you just look at Herodotus' maps, it shows that. But also, interestingly, if you look at the bigger version of that map, over there towards Europe in the Atlantic, they call it the Cronus Sea. Yeah, and the Atlantic at that time, for Atlas, they call the Occidental Sea. And Urethran Sea, which is down the Red Sea, and so on. In the Hesiod works in days, Prometheus is addressed as son of Iapetus, Prometheus, one of the sons of Japeth, and no mother is named. However, in Hesiod's Theogony, Clymene is listed as Iapetus' wife and the mother of Prometheus. In Aeschylus's play Prometheus Bound, Prometheus is son of the goddess Themis. People have said that's where Theme comes from and so on, but she's the queen of heaven in a way. If you look, she's the lady of good counsel, kind of like Nike for when everything gets torn apart, but you also see the queen in heaven here. She's the queen of divine order, fairness, law, natural law, and custom. Her symbols are the scales of justice. Tools are to remain balanced and pragmatic. Themis means divine law. The theme, Theos, is very similar and works with the same linguistics. However, Horace's odes, Horace writes that the bold offspring of Japetus, Prometheus he's talking about, brought fire to the people by wicked deceit. And that's how people got the fire. Well, we know now, of course, that people have had fire for way back before then. So what are they talking about? Well, they're talking about using fire for far different reasons than having a normal hearth or making bread and things like that. like for sacrifices and for metallurgy and all these concepts that came out of it, that if you look at the Bible, all that and makeup and blah music and blah 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 all comes from these angels, which you think sounds fantastic, and it was their little idea, but they didn't want to go with the other guy's idea. Well, if you look at that and break it down, there's a time before time with these titans, how it all breaks down kind of like that too. It's the same damn thing. Sons of Iapetus were sometimes regarded as mankind's ancestors. Knock knock, ding, and such. Some of humanity's worst qualities were also said to have inherited these four gods, each of whom were described with a particular moral fault that often led to their own downfall. For instance, sly and clever Prometheus could perhaps represent crafty scheming, the inept and guileless Epimetheus foolish stupidity, the enduring strongness of powerful Atlas was excessive daring, and the arrogant Menelaus was rash violence. And each one was their downfall, was their Achilles heel. For other than that, they were impregnable. So you look at this, and it's a simple schematic here, and I know it's small, it doesn't show up well here, but you can see there are three different groupings that are done here, and they all come from this original Uranus and Gaia, which is and Us, which has to do with and Gaia, Kia, and this same idea, and Thea comes from that. But we also have Helios, the sun, and Selena, the moon. We have Astraeus, the stars, and constellation of the horses, Perseus, Chryseus, and Eurybia. So Eurybia, people have said, well, is that Libya? No, Eurybia is Europe. So we have this connection with Europa and situations that are with that same type of name. She was the consort of Chrysis, though. Chrysis. Chios. Pontus. Like the Pontic Steps? Could be. Then we have another group here which shows you that Oceanus and things, and they go with Kronos and Rhea and Hera, which we know very well, and Heracles and so on, comes from that, and it's another representation. And we have Demeter, the goddess of grain, right? She has to do with Ceto and things, and that I could go way off on the Phoenicians and how this all connects to them. God, that'd be another one. But then we have Poseidon, and here he is, one of the 12 gods, god of the sea, storms, earthquake, and horses. You ever wondered why he could possibly be connected with horses in a time that there weren't any horses in the Middle East? And where horses come from, and what's up with that Trojan horse? Well, his Roman equivalent is Neptune, and I'm trying to tell you with all my stories that I have here and connections of it. But here we go with Japetus, and Asia, Clymene or Asia, and Atlas and his sons, what comes from that. But hey, off branch here, the Horae. The Horae, or Horai, are hours, were the goddesses of the seasons and the natural portions of time. Where do you get this? Well, Horus is the god of sun who keeps going through things, but there's also, in Horus's moving through the sky and pivot back and forth, brings about the seasons that go on. Knock knock. There's the Muses. They did a cool video about the Muses, and cross-linked, and I never wanted to get back to it, but it went into Muses and cherubim and how someone is a muse and she inspires you to do things and stuff and all that goes along with that. And I'll redo it one of these days. But then again, there's Themis that we're talking about, right? Fairness and law, scales of justice, goddess of all. Mary, somehow she takes a step from being here to being there, and goes from the point of being a step down to here, But she uses his mom to, even in the Catholic Church, well, she's the other way. Also, we saw that thing about 9 below and 9 above in the heavens, and there are 9 levels to hell, and we talked about that recently in hell, and I even showed you myself in that video game where I'm on one of the planes of hell and how it goes on down, and there's this dog Cerberus, which is just like the dog that that little girl Hell went to, and she was supposed to be there to greet everybody in and make sure everything's all right. And sometimes old sacrifices were done that way, and people thought it was some mean, weird, cruel thing that was going on. And yes, it does, looking back on it. But people were also saying, you know, whenever we're going to kill you here, and whenever you go up to heaven, you're supposed to ask God to see if you can fix it because He's not listening to us down here. You can imagine something stupid like that going on in elder times, and I could talk about stupidity for hours and hours of what went on too compared to what we know today. But that's kind of cheating, isn't it? For it's amazing what these people did know of their times. And so, what was I going to look up? Oh, Ethiopia, for some reason it had it in here. So, just a side mention here of the Ethiopians. And the brown areas are all places that had Ethiopians in it. Strangeness to this map, because this is Herodotus's map, and he tells you that it's in Libya. They don't call Africa Africa just yet. It's named later after Caucasian and stuff, but it's this magic extending to the Horn of Africa, terminating in the uninhabitable desert. All peoples inhabiting the southernmost fringes were known as Ethiopians after their dark skin, and the thing comes off as sunburnt skin, and so they had sunburnt. For even these people that were past them there, known as the Macrobians, were said to have been the fairest of people, which in this lingo that they had in words such as xanthos means blonde, and probably light eyes with hair too. Strange that they're here on the horn here, but people have said later that might have been Indians. But if you look at the southern part of India, it's also quite dark, but the north part were Aryans at one time, and so you have that. But they also said that they're real long-lived people and all this stuff here. There's the Macrobians here, and just another picture of the same thing coming up. And I'll do a video about that eventually here. So things nowadays that we call certain names, I mean, that area right there was called Abyssinia. And look, where they even say Ethiopians are, even if we're talking about in that area, isn't actually where Abyssinia is. But here's Atlas Mountains, and in the other map they do of this, they show Atlantis, and look how the Nile bends and goes there. Well, they heard about this river courses that ran through here that dried up long ago, and they thought that the Atlas Mountains melted and did that because they didn't know what was going on up here at the time. It took all the way really till Dr. Livingston, I presume, before, and Stanley finding him and so on, that you know well the story of, or have heard the little thing I'm saying and get the idea of. But so Asia, and then we said the goddess there, Metis, and she looked extremely like Isis. And then there's a connection to Medes, and this is just a change of a T to a D, and this is the one of the most common switches there are. And you talk about Medes, and I've recently made a video, which I haven't even put out also, that shows their original home of Ecbatana and how it's been being excavated for a little while, and I hope they find some pretty decent artifacts, for it looks somewhat buried in after the whole run of everything, because it's under quite a few feet of things, and it's almost like one of those tell situations. But yeah, so that's about it. But we're making connections with all these people, and we've talked about how people are all up here. Oh, I know, I wanted whenever I look here and it showed the Celts are here and so on, but it really doesn't show anything up here. But in the other map version of this, that's where it shows the Chronos Seas at, right? And Iberia is over here, and the Hebrewish type people, and something that had to do with 12 tribes that pretty much encompass everywhere that's brown. You don't think I'm talking about Ethiopian, blah, blah, blah. Well, look, the Caucasus Mountains. I'm quite sure the Caucasians and the Caucasus Mountains didn't have even admixed people there.